The storm was screaming across the mountains when Special Agent Reed Ashford found himself hanging half his body over a cliff, gripping the wrist of an elderly man whose life was slipping through his fingers. Snow blasted sideways. The world beneath them was nothing but darkness and the roar of wind swallowing every breath.
Hold on to
Behind
me, don't look
Reed,
down.
Ghost, his 4-year-old German shepherd, a muscular sable-gray
Hands are
sentinel with
slipping.
intelligent amber eyes, dug his paws into the ice and clamped his jaws onto the back strap
The
of
ribbon
Reed's
means you
tactical
understand
jacket,
the stakes.
refusing to let him fall.
They're at the lodge. Hurry.
3
there isn't
lives.
much time.
1 cliff, and no margin for error. "Hold on, sir," Reed shouted, voice strained as the ice cracked beneath him. The old man wheezed, terrified. Don't let me go." Reed's gloves burned against the frost, muscles shaking. That was the moment everything hung in balance. But only 3 minutes earlier. None of this had happened. Reed had been driving through the blizzard in silence, his SUV cutting through the whiteout like a single match in an endless void. The heater hummed weakly. The wipers screeched against the ice. Ghost sat upright in the passenger seat, tense, breath fogging the glass. "Ghost? What is it, boy?" Reed asked, glancing over. The dog didn't blink. Then, out of nowhere, Ghost let out a long, mournful howl. Not a bark, a warning. A cry that carried something almost human, almost spiritual. Before Reed could react, Ghost lunged, grabbing Reed's sleeve with his teeth, tugging the man toward the narrow, barely visible side road buried in snow. Reed felt his chest tighten. Ghost had never behaved like this. Not even during hostage rescues or active shooter operations. All right, Reed muttered, flicking the turn signal. "I trust you." The moment he turned, the headlights revealed something that didn't belong in any winter night. A silver Mercedes perched at a terrifying angle, front buried in snow, rear tires hanging completely off the edge of a 100-foot drop. The car trembled on a sheet of cracking ice, like it was breathing its last breath. Reed slammed the SUV into park and ran. Ghost jumped out beside him, scanning the scene with razor-sharp instinct. Inside the Mercedes, an elderly man lay slumped over the wheel. Thin, pale, hair silver-white and slicked to his forehead. His chest heaved unevenly, classic signs of cardiac distress. "Sir, can you hear me?" Reed shouted, banging on the window. The man's eyelids fluttered. Reed smashed the glass with his elbow, unlocked the door, and the entire car shifted. Ghost barked sharply, warning Reed as the sedan groaned and slid inches closer to the abyss. Reed didn't hesitate. He climbed inside, grabbed the old man under the arms, and yanked with all the strength of a former HRT operator. "Come on, sir. Stay with me." He pulled the man free, just as the ice beneath the rear tires gave way. The Mercedes tilted, hung, and then dropped silently into the dark. A faint explosion lit the snow far below. Reed didn't have time to breathe. The cliff edge crumbled under his knees. He grabbed the old man's wrist, and suddenly he was dangling over the void, fighting death itself. Now, back in the present, Reed pulled with everything he had left. His shoulder screamed, his boots slipped, and Ghost refused to let him fall, muscles trembling under the strain. With a final heave, Reed rolled backward onto solid ground, dragging the elderly man with him. Snow burst around them like cold smoke. The old man lay gasping, eyes unfocused. Reed leaned over him. "Sir, stay with me. What's your name?" A whisper escaped the man's cracked lips. Arthur. Arthur Merrick." Reed stared. He recognized the name. Almost everyone did. Arthur Merrick, widely known, ridiculously wealthy, but also notoriously private. What was a man like him doing alone in a blizzard on a mountain road? Arthur's trembling hand reached up and brushed the small white ribbon on Reed's chest pocket, the ribbon that once belonged to Reed's little sister. Arthur's eyes widened and filled with something fragile. Something haunted. Arthur spoke in a cracked whisper that cut Reed to the bone. "You look like my son." His voice broke. "The son I lost so many years ago." Reed froze. Arthur's fingers fumbled at his coat, trying to pull something out. "The watch. Don't let anyone see it. Not him." Reed leaned closer, heart pounding. "Who are you talking about? Who shouldn't see it?" Arthur's breath shook, and he whispered a name Reed never expected. "Your father." The wind swallowed the rest. Reed felt the world tilt, not from the cliff, but from those impossible words. Ghost whined softly, limping to Arthur's side. A thin trail of blood darkened the snow. Glass had sliced his paw, but Ghost ignored the pain. He curled his warm body against the old man's chest, protective, instinctive, almost spiritual in the ways only some dogs could be. Reed lifted Arthur into his arms and began carrying him toward the road. Snow bit into his face, but the storm felt wrong, like it wasn't just weather, like it was hiding something. That was when Ghost froze again, body stiff, tail straight, ears forward. A low growl rumbled from deep in his chest, a sound Reed hadn't heard since the night his sister died. Reed stopped. "Ghost, what is it?" Ghost stared into the swirling darkness of the curve ahead. Reed followed his gaze. Something stuck out of the snow, small, pink, half buried. Reed knelt, brushed the snow away, and lifted it. A child's glove, worn, frayed, pink with a faded cartoon pattern, the same kind of glove his little sister wore the night she never made it home. Reed's breath caught as the wind suddenly went still, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. Ghost let out a mournful howl, a sound that echoed like an omen in the dark. The past wasn't gone. It was standing on this road, waiting. And this night, this rescue, was no accident. If you believe angels still walk snowy roads, if you believe miracles appear exactly when we need them, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, so you never miss another story where justice, faith, and destiny meet in the quiet places of this world. The storm had quieted just enough for Reed Ashford to hear his own breath as he carried Arthur Merrick toward the SUV. Ghost limped ahead of him, leaving small dots of blood in the snow, blood he pretended not to notice. The shepherd's sable coat glistened under the dim headlights, his amber eyes scanning the darkness for threats Reed couldn't see. Even injured, Ghost moved like a guardian angel made of muscle and instinct, pacing just close enough to shield them both. Reed lowered Arthur into the back seat. The elderly man's face looked even paler under the interior light, sunken cheeks trembling in shallow breaths. Reed carefully wrapped a thermal blanket around him, feeling the cold radiating through the frail bones beneath the fabric. For a moment, Reed just watched him, watching the rise and fall of a chest that had nearly stopped for good only minutes ago. Ghost climbed in next, nudging Arthur's shoulder with a soft whine. The dog pressed himself alongside the old man's ribs, offering warmth the way only canines in survival mode understood. Reed felt a strange weight tighten inside him. Ghost didn't act like this for just anyone. Twice in the past, Ghost had shielded someone on the edge of death. Twice, those moments had changed Reed's life forever. He started the SUV and pulled back onto the icy road, careful, slow, trying not to jostle the man clinging to consciousness behind him. The windshield wipers brushed away the snow that returned faster than Reed liked. Minutes passed in tense silence. Then, Arthur stirred. Not fully, just barely. like his soul was trapped halfway between waking and some darker place. His voice cracked through the quiet, soft but piercing enough to freeze Reed's hands on the wheel. If I don't make it, find the picture in my wallet. His breath shuddered. It will show you where to go. Reed glanced in the mirror. Arthur's eyes were open only a slit. The pupils quivered. This wasn't rambling. This wasn't confusion. The man was trying to deliver something he believed mattered, something urgent, something that sounded dangerously like a clue. Reed reached back, slid the old leather wallet from Arthur's coat pocket, and opened it. The first thing he saw wasn't money or IDs, but a photograph. A small, faded, almost yellowed picture tucked beside a metal card. Reed pulled it closer to the light. 3 people stood side by side. A younger Arthur Merrick, stronger, smiling, a teenage boy who looked unmistakably like Arthur's son, and Reed's breath stopped. His father who had walked away from Reed's life more than 20 years ago. Behind the 3 of them, almost hidden by the shadow of a tree, was a small dog, a juvenile German shepherd, black-gray sable coat, bright amber eyes, the same eyes Reed saw every day in his partner sitting behind him. Ghost let out a low, uneasy rumble as Reed stared at the photograph. The dog's gaze fixed on the picture like he recognized it too. Reed felt the back of his throat tighten. His fingers shook as he flipped to the metal card behind the photo. Merrick Foundation, restricted access. No explanation, no date, no title. Nothing but those words and a number engraved so shallowly it was almost invisible. Reed swallowed, his pulse pounding. Why would his father be in a picture with Arthur? How did Ghost resemble that dog behind them? Why give Reed this photograph now, on this road, on this night? Before Reed could ask anything, Arthur's head slumped to the side. A full faint this time. No more whispered clues. Just the quiet rattle of breath as the SUV sped toward the nearest hospital. They reached the emergency entrance 20 minutes later. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher. Among them was a tall woman with warm brown skin, dark curly hair tied into a tight bun, and sharp, intelligent eyes behind square glasses. Her badge read, Dr. Maya Caldwell, ER physician. She looked mid-40s, calm but commanding, the kind of person who had spent years walking the thin line between endings and second chances. What happened? She asked, her voice steady even in urgency. He suffered a cardiac episode and almost went over a cliff. Reed answered. He's hypothermic and weak, but conscious off and on. Name's Arthur Merrick. Dr. Caldwell's eyes widened for just a second, so fast most people would miss it. But Reed caught it. She lowered her voice. Merrick? As in the Merrick. We've had people looking for him. Security has been circling the city all night. Security, Reed repeated. Who's looking for him? Before she could answer, 2 men in suits rushed through the sliding doors, broad-shouldered, athletic, clean-shaven, with earpieces tucked behind their collars. Private security, not amateurs. The kind of men who were trained to move without emotion. The taller one, a man in his late 30s with a square jaw and dark buzz-cut hair, approached Dr. Caldwell. His name tag read, Connor Hale, Executive Protection. His face was stern, expression barely shifting as he scanned the room like danger could spring from any corner. We're here for Mr. Merrick, he said. Where is he? Dr. Caldwell replied sharply. He is a patient first. You'll wait. Reed stepped forward, his voice low but edged with authority. Back up. He nearly died. You'll get answers when the doctor decides he's stable. Connor took one look at Reed's FBI jacket, and lifted his hand slightly as if saying he didn't want trouble. But his eyes flashed something colder, something territorial, something like he wasn't just a guard. He was involved. Reed didn't like that look. Ghost stood beside Reed's leg, ears flat, muscles ready. He didn't growl, but he didn't need to. His silence spoke volumes. Dr. Caldwell nodded to the nurses. Let's move. ICU 3. Arthur disappeared down the hall, under fluorescent lights. Reed leaned back against the wall, heart still pounding from the photograph, from Arthur's cryptic words, from the fact that his father's ghost had reappeared in the most unexpected place possible. A few minutes later, as Reed prepared to step away, a hand suddenly grabbed his wrist. Hard. Reed turned sharply. Arthur Merrick, still unconscious, still half dying, had reached out from his gurney with a grip that didn't match the weakness of his body. His eyes remained closed, lips trembling. And then, with a voice that sounded like it rose from the bottom of a broken soul, he whispered, "Reed, I'm sorry for what your father did to you." Reed froze. He hadn't told Arthur his name. He hadn't said anything about his father. Ghost pressed against his leg, whining softly as if sensing a truth unfolding beyond human understanding. Arthur's hand fell limp again. His breathing slowed, and nurses pushed the gurney away. Reed stood there, shaken to the core, unable to decide whether he had just heard a dying confession or a warning from something bigger than either of them. Morning broke hours later. Snow glowed gold under the sunrise. Reed walked back toward Arthur's room, Ghost limping but determined at his side. He pushed the door open. The bed was empty. Blankets thrown aside, machines still humming. No Arthur Merrick, no body, no explanation. The man who shouldn't have survived was gone. If you believe God places people in our path for a reason, and that miracles sometimes arrive wearing snow and mystery, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories where faith guides the lost back into the light. The briefing room felt colder than the blizzard Reed Ashford had driven through the night before. Walls of steel gray, a long glass table, and fluorescent lights that hummed with a faint, sterile vibration. Reed stood at one end of the table, Ghost sitting tall beside his leg, the dog's ears forward, eyes sharp. Reed still carried the soreness in his shoulder from pulling Arthur Merrick off the cliff, and his thoughts replayed Arthur's whispers again and again. Words about Reed's father, the photograph, the watch, and the apology Reed didn't understand. But the room didn't care about last night. The room cared only about protocol, and it surrounded him like a cage. Across from him, Assistant Director Trent Collins leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, an expression of false concern painted across his clean-shaven face. Collins was in his mid-40s, tall and well-groomed, with dark hair combed straight back and eyes that never smiled, even when his mouth did. His suit was immaculate, navy with sharp shoulders and a tie knotted with military precision. But his eyes, cold, calculating, revealed something much darker beneath the polished exterior. And Ghost sensed it. The shepherd hadn't blinked once since Collins walked in. "Agent Ashford," Collins said, voice smooth like the edge of a blade. "You are aware this is an emergency disciplinary review?" Reed clenched his fists. "Yes, sir. And I'm also aware this is coming less than 10 hours after I rescued a civilian from a fatal incident." "Alleged incident," Collins interrupted. "There is no proof a crash occurred. There is no crashed vehicle found. There is no victim. There is no witness. And there is certainly no record of Arthur Merrick being admitted to the hospital." Reed stared at him. He was there. Doctors saw him. Nurses treated him. And he vanished from his room. Collins spread his hands as if offering sympathy, though the gesture was all performance. And yet, nobody saw him. Nobody remembers him. The hospital claims they received an anonymous heart attack patient with no ID, no distinguishing features, and he was discharged after stabilizing. No one can confirm your story. Reed shook his head, disbelief twisting in his chest. That's impossible. Impossible, Collins repeated, voice dripping with condescension. Is the fact that you left your assigned patrol route last night without authorization. You abandoned your position during a high-risk storm alert without notifying dispatch or your supervisor. I saved a man's life, Reed said. Collins leaned forward. What man, Agent Ashford? Where is he now? Ghost let out a low growl. Not loud, but deep enough to make two junior agents flinch. Reed placed a steadying hand on Ghost's neck. Collins ignored the dog. Reed, the Bureau cannot operate on fantasies or instincts. You left your position. You disobeyed orders. And you put a federal operation at risk. Reed's jaw tightened. There was no federal operation last night. Collins' lips twitched, the smallest signal Reed was right, and that Collins didn't like being contradicted. Across the table, Special Agent Luis Harlow cleared his throat. Harlow was in his late 30s, a broad-shouldered man with warm brown skin and short, neat black hair. He usually offered reason where others offered judgment, but this time he avoided Reed's eyes. Ashford, we're not saying you're lying. We're saying there's nothing supporting your version of events. Ghost shifted, a subtle but meaningful movement. His tail stiffened, his amber eyes narrowed on Collins. Reed inhaled sharply and laid the photograph from Arthur's wallet on the table. This was in his pocket. My father is in this picture. Arthur Merrick knew him. He knew things about my family he shouldn't. There's more going on than you understand. Collins didn't even look at the photo. Your personal family history has no relevance to the fact you left your assigned area without authorization. It does if Arthur was targeted, Reed said. It does if someone wanted him gone before he could talk. Collins stood slowly, smoothing his suit jacket. Agent Ashford, enough. Ghost rose too, body stiff as a drawn bow. Collins' eyes flickered downward, not in fear, but in irritation. Ghost's reaction was not normal. The shepherd sensed something Reed couldn't yet see. Collins stepped closer, and Ghost suddenly lunged, not attacking, but moving between Reed and Collins, baring his teeth in a silent, primal warning. Not rage, not duty, fear. Ghost, the dog who had stood unmoved before gunfire, before explosions, before death, was afraid of Trent Collins. The entire room went silent. Agents stared. Reed felt a chill crawl up his spine. Ghost wasn't just protecting him. He was reacting to something in Collins. Something old, something remembered, something wrong. Collins froze for half a second, then scoffed under his breath. Control your animal. Reed knelt, gripping Ghost's harness. Ghost, easy. Sit. But Ghost didn't sit. Ghost didn't blink. He stayed locked onto Collins with a tension Reed had only seen once before, years ago in the aftermath of his sister's death, when Ghost stood over the glove in the snow, trembling in the same way. Collins adjusted his tie. This behavior only reinforces my recommendation. Reed stood. Recommendation for what? The assistant director stepped back to the table and signed a document with a single stroke. Effective immediately, you are suspended. Badge and firearm, Agent Ashford. Reed's chest collapsed inward. You're punishing me for saving a man's life. I'm punishing you for lying. Collins corrected coldly. Reed slammed his badge on the table. I didn't lie. His firearm followed. Collins met his eyes with a look Reed could only describe as triumphant. You're done for now, Agent Ashford. You may return home until further notice. Reed clenched his jaw, turned away, and Ghost followed him with a low, wounded whine. No one in the room spoke, not even Harlow. Outside in the parking lot, the cold air felt heavier than the night before, as if the storm hadn't ended at all. Reed sank into the driver's seat, bracing his elbows on his knees. Ghost climbed in beside him, lifting his injured paw, placing his head gently on Reed's lap. Reed stroked the shepherd's fur, feeling the rise and fall of his breath. They sat in silence, both staring at the line of snow-covered mountains in the distance. Those same mountains where Arthur Merrick had whispered the truth, where Reed's father had once disappeared, where everything had begun. Reed pressed his forehead against the steering wheel. What are we missing, boy? What did Arthur know? Ghost nuzzled his arm and then stared out toward the mountains again with a haunted intensity, as if urging Reed not to give up, as if there was something calling them back. That was when Reed's phone vibrated, an unknown number. Reed hesitated, then answered. Ashford. The voice on the other end was a whisper, ragged, urgent, and unmistakably terrified. If you want to know the truth about your father, don't trust anyone who sat in that room this morning. Static crackled. The line went dead. Reed lifted his eyes toward the mountains again, pulse pounding. Someone out there knew the truth, and someone else was trying desperately to bury it. If you believe God sends signs at the exact moment we need them most, like a whisper cutting through the storm, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of justice, faith, and the miracles hidden in the quiet corners of our world. The FBI headquarters buzzed with an energy Reed Ashford hadn't felt since the morning of his suspension. But this time, the tension wasn't aimed at him. Reed stood in the lobby with Ghost at his side. The shepherd pressed so close that Reed could feel the warmth of his fur through his jeans. Snow-laced sunlight filtered through the tall glass windows, illuminating the rows of agents moving with sharp, anxious movements. Something was happening. Something big enough to pull every eye toward the entrance. A sound rumbled outside. Not one vehicle, but several. Engines low, smooth, expensive. Ghost lifted his head sharply, ears twitching toward the glass doors. Reed followed the dog's gaze just as a convoy of black SUVs rolled into view. Sleek, tinted windows, polished like obsidian. Each SUV bore a golden emblem on the plate frame, a symbol Reed knew but had never seen this close, the Merrick Foundation crest. The doors slid open, and cold winter air swept through the lobby as 6 men in matching suits stepped inside. They were massive, all wearing black coats with comms wired discreetly behind their ears. Broad shoulders, athletic frames, clean cuts, private security of the highest tier. And standing between them, Arthur Merrick. But not the frail, trembling man Reed had dragged from a dying car. Arthur walked with a posture that commanded the room. His silver hair was slicked back, his clothes tailored with subtle elegance. A dark charcoal overcoat, matching slacks, polished shoes, and a deep blue scarf wrapped with meticulous care. His face, though marked by age, had regained color and strength. Gone were the signs of hypothermia. Gone was the weakness. In its place, authority so powerful it seemed to tilt the room around him. The entire lobby froze. Whispers hissed through the air. That's Arthur Merrick, national-level donor. He funds half our advanced tech programs. Even Reed stood speechless. Ghost didn't. The shepherd bolted forward, not aggressively, but with purpose. He approached Arthur with slow, deliberate steps, muzzle lifted as he sniffed the man's coat. But it wasn't a simple greeting. Ghost sniffed one spot, then another, then pressed his nose directly over the fabric near Arthur's ribs. Reed recognized the expression instantly. It was the same behavior Ghost had shown the night Reed found the photograph, the night he saw the dog behind his father and Arthur's son. Ghost wasn't just smelling Arthur. He was smelling the memory of another dog. A dog he somehow recognized. Arthur's cold eyes softened as he knelt, slowly but without effort, and placed a steady hand on Ghost's head, stroking with familiarity. "You're just like him," Arthur whispered. "Just like Shadow." Reed's breath halted. Shadow, the dog from the photo. Ghost leaned into Arthur's touch, not fully trusting, but acknowledging something ancient. Something remembered. Assistant Director Trent Collins appeared at the top of the stairs, pale as paper. His confident stride faltered mid-step. Reed had never seen the man look rattled, never seen him sweat, never seen him anything but smug and controlled. But now, his jaw tightened, his pupils shrank, his hands trembled almost invisibly at his sides. Arthur lifted his gaze, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Assistant Director Collins," he said, voice smooth but carrying a warning beneath the surface. "We need to talk." Collins swallowed hard. "Mr. Merrick, I wasn't informed of your arrival." "Clearly," Arthur replied, stepping forward. "I came to address a grave mistake." Reed felt his pulse thrum. Ghost returned to his side, pressing lightly against his leg, tail low, eyes never leaving Arthur as though he expected more revelations to unfurl. The procession moved upstairs, where a special conference room was opened, its walls lined with screens, a polished table dominating the center. The moment Arthur entered, every agent inside stood at once. Arthur took the head of the table, his expression firm. "Let's begin." Collins tried to reclaim his authority. "Before we—" Arthur raised a hand, silencing him with effortless command. "Agent Reed Ashford was suspended this morning." Arthur's voice filled the room. "A man who saved my life." A gasp rushed through the crowd. Reed's chest tightened. Arthur continued, "He risked his own safety for mine, and he is being punished for it." His gaze sharpened, pinning Collins in place. "Why?" Collins forced a breath, fumbling for composure. "Mr. Merrick, with respect, there was no evidence of your incident. No vehicle found, no hospital admission, no—" "I erased the record," Arthur said calmly. The room fell silent. Reed stared at him. "You erased it?" Arthur nodded. "My arrival at the hospital had to stay confidential, for reasons that Agent Ashford has now become entangled in." Collins stuttered. "Sir, this misunderstanding—" "This was not a misunderstanding," Arthur said. "This was a failure. Yours." Ghost growled, soft but unmistakable, as if agreeing. Arthur reached into his coat and pulled out an old black-and-white photograph. He slid it across the table until it stopped in front of Reed. Reed picked it up with trembling hands. It was the same photograph he'd seen in Arthur's wallet. But this version was larger, clearer. "You asked why your father disappeared," Arthur said quietly, gaze steady as stone. "You asked why he never returned." Reed swallowed hard. "Tell me." Arthur breathed deeply. "Your father didn't go rogue. He didn't abandon you. He didn't flee." Arthur's voice softened with something like remorse. "He was trying to save my son." The room erupted in murmurs. Reed felt his world tilt. Collins looked like someone had punched the air from his lungs. Arthur continued. "My son was kidnapped. A covert operation went wrong. Shadow, the dog in that picture, was trained to lead your father and my boy out. Your father died protecting him. Reed's throat tightened painfully. Why didn't anyone tell me? Arthur's eyes dimmed. Because those in charge didn't want the truth known. Some of them are still in this building. The atmosphere cracked like thunder. Arthur reached for the small wooden case his guards had been carrying, a dark mahogany box with brass hinges worn smooth by time. He placed it on the table before Reed, hands steady but eyes heavy with meaning. "This," Arthur murmured, "is the last thing your father touched." Ghost whimpered softly, ears folding back as if sensing something sacred. Arthur opened the box. Inside lay a metal clearance badge, aged, scratched, but unmistakable. The name engraved on it, Thomas Ashford, Reed's father. The air drained from the room. Arthur whispered, "Your father died a hero, not a traitor." Reed gripped the badge, tears stinging his eyes before he could stop them. Arthur closed the box and straightened. "We're done here." Everyone rose instinctively. Arthur motioned toward Collins with a cold, sharp nod. "And you. We will speak privately." Collins stiffened. Reed saw panic flicker in the man's eyes. The same panic Ghost had smelled long before any human sensed danger. As Arthur stepped toward the door, he paused beside Reed. "Come with me later. There is more you must know." Reed nodded, unable to speak. Arthur's final glance held both warning and promise. This was only the beginning. If you believe God reveals truth in His perfect timing, even truths buried by men, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories where faith leads the way, even through the darkest mysteries. Snow whispered against the windows of the FBI archival wing as Reed Ashford followed Arthur Merrick down a dim corridor rarely used anymore. The air held a cold sterility mixed with a hint of dust, like a place abandoned because it remembered too much. Ghost padded beside them, his black and sable fur brushing Reed's leg, the dog's amber eyes scanning shadows with the intensity only a seasoned K9 could command. Arthur leaned slightly on his polished cane, a new item Reed had never seen him use before. His steps were firm, but there was an undercurrent of strain in his breath. The powerful man who had confronted the entire bureau hours earlier looked older now, not weaker, but weighed down. Like a man coming to face the ghosts, he buried himself. Reed unlocked the final steel door using Arthur's temporary clearance card. The scanner beeped, the bolts released, and the heavy door swung inward to reveal a room sealed years ago. A cold rectangular space lined with neglected filing cabinets, a dusty table, stacks of boxed evidence, and a bookshelf pushed strangely far from the wall, as if someone once wanted to hide something behind it. Ghost stepped in first. His gait slowed, tail raised, nostrils flaring with purpose. "Easy, boy," Reed murmured, placing a hand on the shepherd's muscular flank. Ghost's breathing quickened, alert, focused, the same way he behaved when tracking a missing child or detecting explosive residue. Arthur's breath hitched. "He smells it, doesn't he? Something." Reed's voice tightened. Ghost never reacts like this unless it's close. They let the dog lead. Ghost circled the room once, twice, then stopped in front of the bookshelf. He pressed his nose to the lower corner, sniffed once, then abruptly scratched at the wood with sharp urgency. The scrape of claws echoed like a warning. Reed frowned. Behind the shelf. Together, Reed and Arthur dragged the heavy shelf aside, its legs screeching against the concrete floor. Behind it, flushed into the wall, sat a small metal safe. Sleek, modern, nothing like the rest of the room's outdated furnishings. Arthur's eyebrows tightened. This wasn't here 10 years ago. Reed's jaw set. Collins. Ghost let out a low growl, recognizing the name before the men connected the dots. Reed knelt, examining the lock. A numeric pad, biometric sensor, and manual override slot. Someone went to great lengths to hide this. Arthur removed a small card from his inner coat pocket. Try this. Your clearance? Collins thinks I don't know what he's been doing, Arthur replied, bitterness sharpening every syllable. But I know how he hides things. Reed slid the card into the slot. The safe clicked open. Inside, illuminated by a soft internal light, lay 3 items. A slim USB drive, a leather-bound notebook worn at the edges, and an unopened envelope yellowed by time. Arthur inhaled sharply and stumbled back, a half step. Reed caught his arm. Easy. That envelope, Arthur whispered, voice cracking. I wrote that letter for my son, the night before he disappeared. I could never find it again. Collins must have... He stopped, emotion choking the words. Reed picked up the USB first. Let's see what Collins was hiding. Ghost suddenly stiffened. He barked once, sharp, urgent, and pressed his head against Reed's hip, eyes locked on the USB in Reed's hand. Reed felt a chill crawl across his spine. The dog wasn't reacting to danger. He was reacting like he recognized the object, like it carried a scent tied to trauma or blood. Reed glanced at Arthur, who had gone pale. Ghost has smelled this before, Reed said quietly, and not from tonight. Arthur swallowed, throat working as if forcing down a decade of regret. That drive might contain your father's last moments. The room fell silent. No hum of lights, no movement. Just Ghost's trembling breath and the weight of a truth Reed wasn't ready for. But he knew he had to open it. Reed slotted the USB into the old laptop on the table. A single video file appeared. OP-77, recall order final. Arthur steadied himself against the table. I've heard of this file. I thought it never existed. Reed clicked play. Static flickered, then a grainy recording snapped into focus. Military command room, years old. The younger Collins stood rigid at the center, face stern, eyes cold. Reed felt his stomach drop. Collins's voice filled the room. Effective immediately. Operation 77 units are ordered to withdraw. Leave non-essential personnel behind. Reed froze. Non-essential personnel? Arthur sank into the metal chair behind him, staring like a man reliving a nightmare. On the video, the camera panned to the mission roster. Thomas Ashford, last known position, Zone C, Evan Merrick. Last known position, Zone C. Reed whispered, My father was alive when they pulled back. Arthur nodded, tears filling his aging eyes. And so was my son. Another voice in the recording said, Sir, we can't just abandon them. Collins replied, They're already lost. We protect the rest. Arthur slammed a hand on the table, shaking. He lied to me for 10 years. He told me they were dead before help could arrive. Reed lifted the leather notebook next. The cover was cracked, fingerprints still faintly visible. His father's prints. Opening it felt like opening a wound. The first page began with unstable handwriting. Reed, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. But I never abandoned you. Reed's breath broke, his vision blurred. Beside him, Arthur lowered his forehead into his hands, the unread envelope lying on the table like a wounded heart. I should have known. I should have questioned the timeline. I should have fought harder. Ghost nudged Reed's knee gently, then moved and pressed against Arthur's leg too, placing himself between the two men as though reminding them they were not alone, that grief did not have to divide. Reed closed the notebook carefully, his hands trembling, skin burning with the truth he'd sought his entire adult life. "We need to take this evidence to the director," Reed said. Arthur nodded slowly. "And Collins must answer for what he did." Before Reed could reach for the envelope, Ghost's ears snapped up. He sniffed the floor, then pawed at it once, twice, harder. The scraping echoed deep, hollow, like something beneath the concrete wasn't solid. Reed knelt. "Ghost, what is it, boy?" Ghost stepped back, growled low, then clawed again, this time hitting something that made a metallic clink. Reed and Arthur exchanged a look. There was something beneath the floor, something Collins hid even deeper. Reed dug his fingers along the crack Ghost exposed. He pulled hard, lifting a thin square of loosened concrete. Underneath sat a second compartment, smaller, darker, and inside it lay something far more dangerous than a USB. Reed's breath caught violently. "Arthur, you need to see this." Cliffhanger. If you believe God reveals truth exactly when it's meant to be found, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more stories where faith moves through the impossible. Snow fell in slow, peaceful sheets over the FBI headquarters that Christmas Eve, blanketing the world in white silence as if heaven itself wanted to witness what was about to unfold. Inside the main atrium, the annual holiday gathering had begun. Agents in dark suits mingling, strands of gold lights reflecting off polished floors, a towering Christmas tree glittering with silver ornaments. A soft instrumental carol played through hidden speakers, warm and gentle, a sound meant to soothe tired minds. But Reed Ashford felt none of that warmth. He stood near the back wall, Ghost seated loyally beside his left leg. Ghost looked tired, his right shoulder bandaged from the earlier cut, but his posture remained sharp, alert, unwavering. The black and sable shepherd never lost focus, even in a room full of people. His amber eyes scanned every new face that passed, the way a guardian keeps watch on holy ground. Reed rested a hand on Ghost's back. "Easy, boy," he whispered. But Ghost wasn't anxious. He was waiting. They both were. Across the room, Arthur Merrick stood with his cane, though Reed noticed the older man barely used it now. In the glow of the Christmas lights, Arthur looked nothing like the trembling grandfather Reed had pulled from the edge of the abyss just days earlier. Dressed in a charcoal suit and a deep blue tie, silver hair neatly combed, shoulders squared, he carried the presence of a man used to commanding rooms far larger than this one. And tonight, he was about to do exactly that. Arthur tapped his cane against the polished floor, once, twice. A sharp, metallic sound. Conversations faltered. Laughter dimmed. Heads turned. Arthur lifted a hand. "If I may, I'd like to request a brief pause in the festivities." Someone lowered the volume of the Christmas music. The soft bells faded into silence. Arthur continued, his voice calm but carrying the weight of authority money alone could never buy. "Tonight is Christmas Eve, a night of truth, a night of reflection, and a night for exposing what's been hidden." Reed straightened. Ghost's ears pricked forward. In the center of the room was a large projector screen, normally used for presentations and commendations. But tonight, Arthur had something else prepared. He nodded toward technician Davis Lee, a young agent with short black hair and square glasses who had been assigned to help Arthur access the digital systems. Davis wasn't remarkable at first glance. Slender build, neatly trimmed beard, pale skin. But he was known for being meticulous and honest to the bone. He stepped forward, plugging in the prepared USB. Collins, who had been standing near the snack table wearing his forced holiday smile, froze mid-bite. The color drained from his face so fast it was visible even from across the room. Arthur's voice rang out. "I believe the Bureau deserves to see the truth." The screen flickered. Static. Then a video began to play. It was the command room, footage Reed and Arthur had watched earlier. The recall order. Collins's younger self filled the screen, issuing the words that would haunt two families for 10 years. Effective immediately, Operation 77 units are ordered to withdraw. Leave non-essential personnel behind. Audible gasps rippled through the room. Another clip appeared, this one from a hallway camera just months earlier. Collins altering financial reports, slipping marked bills into his jacket. The room erupted with shocked murmurs. One agent whispered, "That's criminal, clear as day." Another muttered, "I knew something was off about him." Collins's chest rose and fell rapidly. Panic spread across his face like wildfire. His eyes darted from the screen, to the exit, to Reed. And then he snapped. Like a cornered animal, Collins lunged toward Davis and the USB. "Turn it off. That's classified. You can't show that," he screamed. Reed stepped forward instinctively. Ghost moved faster. The shepherd dashed between Reed and Collins, snarling, a deep, visceral sound. But Collins, wild with fear and humiliation, swung his arm blindly. The blow caught Ghost across the ribs, sending the dog crashing into the leg of a heavy wooden table. "Ghost!" Reed shouted, dropping to his knees. Ghost whimpered, a rare, pained sound. His ears pressed back, his body curled protectively. Reed placed his hands on Ghost's fur, feeling the tremor beneath. The room fell into a tense silence. Then everything erupted at once. Internal affairs officers surged forward. Two grabbed Collins's arms. A third wrestled him back as he thrashed. "You're under arrest," one officer barked. No, this isn't right." Collins shouted, face twisted. "You don't understand. You don't know." But the handcuffs clicked shut like a judgment from above, echoing across the atrium. The agents watched in stunned silence as Collins was dragged away, screaming Reed's name like a curse only he understood. Ghost lifted his head weakly, nudging Reed's arm. Reed exhaled shakily. "Good boy. You protected me." Arthur approached slowly, eyes softening as he looked at Ghost. "He saved you, just like the dog in the photograph saved our boys 10 years ago." Reed swallowed hard. Ghost would give everything without question. "And that," Arthur murmured, "is why tonight had to happen." They retired to a private briefing room afterward, Reed, Ghost, and Arthur. A lamp cast a warm glow across the table. Outside, the Christmas Eve snow thickened, swirling like heaven's breath around the building. Arthur set the yellowed envelope, the unopened letter, on the table. For a long moment, he simply stared at it. His hands, though steady in the boardroom earlier, now trembled slightly. "I wrote this for my son the night before the mission," he said quietly. "I never had the courage to open it after he disappeared. I didn't know where Collins hid it." Reed remained silent, Ghost resting at his feet, head on Reed's boot. Arthur slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, handwritten in firm, confident pen strokes. He read aloud, "Son, if you ever feel alone out there, know that I stand beside you in every decision you make. And if someday you meet someone wiser, braver, or kinder, someone who becomes the strength I could not be for you, then know that I am grateful for him. Forever. Your father." The paper shook in Arthur's hands. His voice broke. "Reed, that man is you." Reed blinked rapidly, breath stuttering. "Arthur, you pulled me from death. You believed me when no one else would. You stood where my son should have stood." Arthur wiped his cheek with the back of his hand. "I could not save my boy, but maybe God, in his mercy, sent me yours." Reed bowed his head. Ghost pressed closer, sensing the emotion radiating from both men. Arthur gently placed one more item on the table, a classified file with red markings. Reed opened it and froze. At the top was a single line printed in bold. Reed's heartbeat roared in his ears. His father might still be alive. Ghost lifted his head sharply and stared at the door, as if he already knew what the next chapter would demand. Cliffhanger. If you believe God brings truth to light in his perfect time, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more stories where miracles move through the brave. A full year had passed, yet the winter wind on the mountain ridge felt exactly the same as the night everything began. Sharp, bitter, and carrying secrets in its breath. Reed Ashford stepped out of the SUV first, snow crunching under his boots. The sky above was pale gold, the sun struggling to break through heavy clouds. Ghost jumped down beside him, his black and sable coat shimmering with frost, breath puffing in short white clouds. Though still a powerful 5-year-old German shepherd, muscular frame, steady amber eyes, the look of a veteran, there was a new calm in him, a quiet wisdom that only time and survival could carve Obi into a creature. Arthur Merrick joined them slowly, bundled in a thick wool coat. His once worried face had softened with the season. The deep lines carved by guilt and grief seemed gentler now. His silver hair peeked beneath a gray beanie, and though age bent his posture slightly, his gaze was steady, purposeful, healing. Reed helped Arthur steady himself on the icy ground. Then they walked together toward the narrow cliff path. Ghost led the way, nose low, tail swaying once in recognition of the terrain. This was the same winding trail where Arthur's car had hung over the abyss 1 year earlier. The same place where Reed nearly slipped with Arthur in his grasp. The same ridge where Ghost had bled on the snow while shielding 2 strangers who would become family. Reaching the overlook, Reed removed 2 bouquets wrapped in brown paper. One for Arthur's son, one for his father. Arthur accepted his bouquet with both hands. "Thank you," he murmured, voice thick with memory. Reed placed the flowers on the stone ledge, brushing away a thin layer of snow. "Dad," he whispered, "I know you're somewhere out there, and I'll keep looking." Arthur knelt stiffly beside him, placing his bouquet beside Reed's. "And Evan, my boy, I hope you know the truth now. I hope you see us standing together." The wind changed direction, soft, warm, almost like a breath, and Ghost sat between them, tail curling around Arthur's leg, his presence grounding them both. Reed rested a hand on the dog's strong back. For a moment, the 3 of them simply stayed there. A man searching for his father, an old man healed from betrayal, and a loyal dog who had bound their fates together. As Reed stood, he saw Arthur wiping his eyes. The older man looked at Reed with quiet pride. "You know," Arthur said softly, "when I look at you now, I see the man your father prayed you would become." Reed smiled faintly. "He raised me on 3 rules. Be fair, be brave, be kind. And you honor them," Arthur said. They turned to leave, making their way back to the SUV. Ghost trotted beside them, occasionally glancing back at the mountain ridge as if checking on the spirits that lingered there. Halfway down the road, Ghost suddenly stopped. His ears shot up. His tail stiffened. A low, urgent whine escaped him, the same sound he made on the night he saved Arthur's life. Reed immediately understood. "What is it, boy?" Ghost bolted forward. Reed and Arthur exchanged a quick look, then ran after him. Ghost reached a bend in the road and stopped, barking sharply toward the slope below. Reed skidded to a halt beside him and froze. A minivan lay half-buried in a snowbank, its headlights flickering weakly. The hood was dented from a slide, and the back wheels spun uselessly, trapped in ice. Inside, 2 children, a boy maybe 7 and a girl around 5, pressed their faces against the window, eyes wide with fear. Arthur gasped. Dear God. Ghost barked again, tail high, as if calling Reed to move. Reed didn't hesitate. Come on, partner. Christmas isn't a day for turning away. They sprinted down the slope. Reed reached the driver's side, wiping snow from the window. Inside, a woman in her 30s sat gripping the wheel, her dark hair sticking to her forehead with sweat. Her skin was pale, lips trembling. She looked up at Reed with tear-filled hazel eyes, panic, relief, confusion all at once. Reed spoke through the glass. Ma'am, we're going to get you out. When she lowered the window, Reed got a better look. Medium height, thin, wearing a cheap winter jacket not suited for the storm. She clearly wasn't wealthy. Calloused hands, tired circles under her eyes, a woman who worked too hard and broke too seldom. I lost control on the turn, she stammered. My brakes locked, my babies. Please help them. Ghost placed his front paws gently on the door, pressing his nose toward the children. They stared at him with stunned awe. The little girl whispered, Mommy. The angel dog came. The mother choked out a breath, startled by the words. Reed smiled gently. He's here to help, I promise. He worked quickly, directing Arthur to keep watch for sliding snow from above. With practiced efficiency, Reed freed the jammed lock, helping the family step carefully onto the safe patch of road. The boy immediately hugged Ghost around the neck, burying his face in the warm fur. Ghost didn't move, just stood tall, steady, allowing the child to hold on like he knew the world had shaken him. The mother wiped her face with shaking fingers. I don't know what I would have done if... No need to finish, Reed said. You're safe now. Arthur stood behind him, breathing hard from the climb, but wearing the softest expression Reed had ever seen on him. Snowflakes clung to his beanie, melting into silver strands. He looked at Reed the way a father looks at a son, not by blood, but by truth. You see, Arthur whispered, this is who you are. This is who your father hoped you'd become. Reed swallowed, emotion rising. Ghost bumped his leg with his cold nose, grounding him. They helped the family into Reed's SUV, warming them with blankets stored in the back. The woman sat trembling, staring at Reed as though he had stepped out of nowhere, an answer to a prayer she hadn't dared to speak aloud. Why were you even up here? She asked softly. Reed looked at Arthur. Arthur looked proudly at Reed. Reed answered, closing a circle. When the family was safely on their way, Reed and Arthur stood by the quiet road again. Ghost sat between them, breath misting into the cold air. Snow drifted lightly from the sky. Ghost lifted his head slowly, then released a long, haunting, beautiful howl. Not sad, not fearful. A sound that rose through the trees, echoing off the mountainside, like a farewell to the past, and a blessing for everyone still walking forward. Arthur placed a hand on Reed's shoulder and whispered, The circle of goodness never ends. You've proven that. Reed watched Ghost's breath merge with the sky and whispered back, We all have a choice to continue it. The three stood there, man, elder, and dog, as snow wrapped around them like a sacred promise. The kindness born on one Christmas Eve would ripple into every year that followed. The circle lived on. Cliffhanger closed. If you believe God sends the right people at the right time, please like, comment, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform for more stories filled with faith and miracles. Sometimes miracles do not arrive as thunder or lightning, but as quiet moments of goodness. A helping hand on a cold road, a loyal dog who refuses to give up, or a stranger who becomes family. On nights like this, we are reminded that God often works through ordinary people, guiding them toward extraordinary acts. And if we choose kindness each day, we become part of the miracle someone else has been praying for. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who may need hope today. Leave a comment with your own blessing or testimony, and subscribe to Angels in Uniform so we can continue walking this journey of faith together. May the Lord watch over you and your loved ones. May His grace light your path wherever you go.